people just sort of, they get the first no and they kind of like scurry along. I'm like, so you're just gonna leave it alone now?
Right. Right.
That's
They
the entrance.
Right. They crumble like Big Mama's cornbread. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast focused on lifestyle, self-care, personal empowerment, and positive relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Mo, best-selling author, award-winning podcast host, keynote speaker, and speaker coach. My goal for every episode is to elevate, educate, and motivate you in a manner that adds immediate value to your personal and professional growth. What's not to love? If you're new to the show or a returning visitor, let's make this official. Hit that subscribe button now.
You can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear magnifies the consequences of failure. What are you scared of? Why are you afraid? I'd rather live like I'm dying than live to die. Any day, my heart is pure, my soul is safe.
My special guest today lives and works in Madrid, Spain, but she's American as sweet potato pie and crazy brainy, y'all. She is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. We need a champion right now for sure. Her ongoing mission is spreading the gospel that running a business doesn't have to feel like you're managing a tornado. Today, we're discussing the do's and don'ts of running a business in any economic climate. And for those who don't own a business, stay tuned for tips on how you can help your employer or effectively run your own business in the future. Welcome, Carrie Ann.
Dr. Mo, how are you?
I am good and happy to have you here with us today to drop some gems for business owners.
I'm so happy to be here, really. I'm a big fan of your podcast too, so I'm the fangirling.
Much appreciated, much appreciated. We need to support one another, and I am a big fan of yours since we met, and just, looking at you living bi-coastal, and well, that's not even bi-coastal, that's transatlantic, and wow, tell me about that first. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I love it. I've been living in Spain for about 5 years now, and running the business from the US, and then I absolutely love it. I love Madrid. That's where I live. And, it's just such a great culture. And, I'm learning a little bit my Spanish, people embarrassed. I should have a better Spanish, but, we're getting there.
Well, and everyone over there probably speaks English as a second language.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah, for
okay.
Sure. And, I live in the capital city. So, you walk into the store, you try to practice your Spanish, and they can tell that, that's the English speaker. They were like, okay, let's just speak English to this poor child.
Right. Which kills your practice, but probably makes things go a little bit fast to get through those transactions quicker.
Exactly.
Sweet. That's on my bucket list. I'm looking between Madrid and Barcelona. So I'm happy to know that I'll have a friend nearby.
You will have a friend. We can go out. I'll show you the hangout spots in Madrid.
Sounds good. Then I'm definitely leaning that way. Yeah. But let's get to what you do business-wise. And first, I want to talk about your background a little bit, because you're an trained attorney. How did you get from being a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser to being a business strategist?
Yeah, I know, right? It's a bit of a jump, but I'll tell you what, what my former life is really what set me up to decide to move into business, because I spent a lot of time. My last project was to raise $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C. And, during that time, it was sort of running a small business in the way that I was running the team, because we had a large enough team, but it was a small entity of a team of folks. And, you're having to raise $120+ million and do it fast and quick in a hurry, because, once you start breaking ground,
Mhm.
Or you break ground, it's perfectly fine because you're raising some money ahead of time. But
Right.
once you break ground, you know it's construction costs go up. You need to like move fast in that space. And so I had to be very strategic and focused on how do we create, as the larger strategy came forth from our board of directors, how do I then, as the head fundraiser, implement that strategy in a way that we're hitting all of our KPIs at the particular time that we wanted to. We're leveraging our team in a way that makes sense. We're motivating our team in a way that makes sense, and we are we're executing in an exceptional manner, because that's really what takes place. That's what really has to happen when you have any big project, whether it's building an international memorial or whether you're running your small business. Having strategy, being able to know what the processes are in order to be able to bring strategy to everyday action and making sure you're executing well. So basically, it was sort of like, after doing that and spending quite a bit of time and learning in my own way, I sort of like, well, you know what? I really have a passion to make sure that other organizations can be able to execute well, because the number of organizations, I think it's 50% basically that have created a strategy, but never are able to implement it. And so originally, when I first started, the first iteration of my business was I was doing consulting with large NGOs around revenue development. And then as time went on, people knew me from DC and the world, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Carrie Ann, come and take a look at this, whatever. And then it evolved into more of working primarily for-profit corporations. But yeah, it really was an interesting jump. But by the time I was, finished up with my last DC initiative, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so here I am,
That's an exciting journey. That is an exciting journey. And it's just wonderful the way things work together for good. Now, two things. First, I don't know what a KPI is, if that's the acronym you use. What is KPI?
It's a key performance indicator.
Okay.
And, it's basically the results that a company wants to create around a goal that they want to achieve. So it's basically saying, hey, yeah, we know we want to, get whatever, 10 new clients this week and so forth, but then creating some sort of KPI to get you there. So maybe it means I need to have, 25 conversations with qualified prospective clients in order for me to get to that 10 new clients, right? So whatever the indicator that you're using, so it can be anything from a indicator that's leading you towards it or sort of a lag indicator, but whatever the indicators that you're using in one's business, you need to have some indicators, and you have to be measuring those indicators in a way, or else you cannot tell. It's like an airplane, you hop on a plane and the plane says, I'm going from New York to LA, right? Well, they set a little path, but we all know the plane goes a little bit off track, and then you have to assess the dial, and the pilot moves it down again, and then maybe it goes a little further up, and you check the dial and you move it down. So KPIs help the business owner and anyone really in life, but the business owner to be able to say, okay, here at this stage of my timeline, we're a little low, so let me adjust so that I can get back on track. And if it's high, great, let's keep doing that as well. But it gives you the ability to figure out based on a dashboard, hey, I'm on track.
Right. So your performance, your outcomes, and it's monitoring, which a lot of us, you're right, don't do, particularly in small and medium-sized business, because frequently we're overwhelmed. So even though we might have started out with a really good strategic plan or mission or values or whatever we said, then we just get caught up instead of living from, paycheck to paycheck. We're living from crisis to crisis.
Isn't that the truth?
And it just, you forget all of that that should be the foundation of your business. I got it. So keep in mind that you're talking to a small business owner, now working for a corporation person, doing my small business on the side. So if I jump in there because you use some acronyms or whatever, it's because I figure there are other people like me who are like, wait, what?
Fair enough.
I don't feel like there's a bad question. If I don't know, I just don't know. So I appreciate you being patient with me on that. Now, I have to say, as a member of the Divine Nine, that I thought the Alphas were a big part of the Martin Luther King Memorial as far as fundraising. Is that correct?
Yes, they were because, and I'm glad to. What sorority are you part of?
I am a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, founded on the campus of Howard University in 1920. We just celebrated 103 years in existence. So I just have to put that out there so I won't be excommunicated.
Of course. Of course.
That's not normally part of my podcast, but since you asked, I have to go into that mode now. I got to represent. Yes, ma'am.
I love it. I love it. Well, yes, because as you know, Dr. King was an Alpha, but the reason why the Alphas were so heavily involved was because it actually was an Alpha project. Mm-hmm. It was three gentlemen who members of Phi Alpha were sitting in their sort of living room, and it was actually the dining room, the kitchen table, and they were sort of just saying, hey, wouldn't it be great to build a memorial to Dr. King? Mm-hmm. And I got a chance to meet a few of them who were part of that conversation before. I think two have passed. I think one is still alive. But nonetheless, so these are gentlemen, you're looking now at in the early 80s when this conversation was taking place.
I did not know that. Wow.
It was before the holiday was.
Right. And all the streets were renamed.
Yeah. So they brought it to the fraternity and said, hey, let's do this. The fraternity was like, well, I don't think that they're going to put a memorial on the National Mall for someone who's not a president or one of our war memorials. But they were like, okay, we'll support you. So those gentlemen, they went to Congress on a regular basis. And they were like, we want to make this happen. We want to make this happen. We want to make this happen. And then eventually, after being, kind of said, well, it's not going to happen.
Right.
They were able to get the authorization to do so. And then once that happened, then the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity started fundraising. Mm-hmm. But, and it was kind of funny. They were like, we'd put a little dollars in the bucket for a bit when they'd go to the conventions. And then eventually when things started really moving, they were like, oh, wait, we could actually do this.
Yeah. And it really caught on with all of us. And we got the fever for it. And I think there's a great, I'm glad you shared that. I realize it's not directly part of what we're supposed to be chatting about, but there is a message there about persistence and resilience and to just keep knocking because there are going to be no's. And if you accept that as inevitable, then just get those no's out of the way and just keep knocking.
You have hit that on the head. And that's a lesson we all can learn in business and in life.
Yes, ma'am.
So many people just they get the first no and they kind of like scurry along. I'm like, so you're just gonna leave it alone now?
Right. Right.
That's the entrance.
Right. They crumble like Big Mama's cornbread. And, and the other thing is people, when they hear something new, when there's going to be a change, that's almost a natural reaction. No, we can't do that. We've never done that. That's not going to work. So that's the other part you got to get around, right?
Yes. And we all have to think about that because our normal reaction, and even when I'm talking to a small business owner, even someone who's been in the business for a bit, or if they are starting, new and they decided, okay, Carrie Ann, I'm noticing that some things happen. I need some strategy. And if I say something, I'm going to assume at this stage of the game that they're going to initially say no, because, I think it's the ego trying to protect us and keep us status quo. Mm-hmm. So, like, well, no, I can't do that. And then you ask the question, well, why not? Well, because I've always done it this way, or we don't do it that way here. And my business, doesn't do it that way. My industry doesn't do it that way, or whatever the reason they come up with. It's always just it's hogwash in the end of the day. Yeah. But yeah, so I think one piece of advice is if you feel the resistance to say no, okay, go with your first no, then ask yourself, well, but really, why am I saying no? And go again and keep going again.
Excellent. I love that. And you're right, for business and for life. Get beyond the no's and the knee-jerk reaction. And thank you for sharing that about the monument, which is so dear to many Americans. And I did not know that story at all. I missed that part. And that's really makes it even more inspiring. I've been there, I've seen it. It's beautiful. And I appreciate the role you played, because that raising 120 million. I mean, I tried to raise 5,000 recently and I almost had to pull my hair out. So I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine that amount of money and to get it done. So kudos to you and the Alphas and everyone else who was part of that. Thank you on behalf of our country. Thank you so very much.
Very welcome. It was one of the highlights of my life and definitely of my career. So
I bet. Why are some, going to get back to the small and mid-sized businesses, why are some SMEs, and I got to admit, here's another acronym, when in healthcare, that's a subject matter expert. So I saw that on your profile and I was like, SMEs?
Well, girl, you know what it is, Dr. Mo? It's because, so in Europe and the rest of the world, they use the acronym SMEs. Here in the States, we use SMBs. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of funny, you know, when I'm depending on who I'm speaking to, I say, and if it's an American, I'm like,
you code switch.
SMB. Yeah. Talking to anybody else in the world, I'm like SME. And basically, you know, it's small and medium enterprise versus small and medium business. But I agree. I grew up in the world of, you know, of consultants and was like, well, it's not a subject matter expert. And
right. No, well, I do a deep dive on all my guests. So when I saw that, I looked it up. I went to Google University and looked it up, and I was like, okay, we learned something today, and that's a good day for me. So, to my question, why are some small and mid-sized enterprises growing but not scaling? Talk to us about the difference between growing and scaling, because I don't think most people realize that's not the same thing. And how can they fix it?
Yeah, no, that's a real good question. And, you know, I would say, well, the difference is growing is you're increasing your revenue, right? But oftentimes scaling is if you're increasing your revenue and other markers, obviously. But the cost of increasing your revenue or increasing your number of customers or increasing whatever is staying the same. Mm-hmm. So if you're scaling, that means that you're growing, but not growing the expenses to grow. If you're growing and whatever you're growing based on, if it's your revenue or customers, whatever, right, but the cost of it is growing alongside, that means you're growing, but you're just growing. You're not actually scaling. Mm-hmm. But if you are growing and by whatever metric you're going to use, and the cost to do so is staying the same or it's minuscule in terms of its increase, then you're scaling, because the gap between the cost versus the increase is widening. And that would be what scaling is.
Okay.
So I think a lot of times when we look at, you know, small businesses, they're growing but not scaling, is that they're just not really paying attention to the numbers. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. Are you, you know, we have our bookkeepers and our accountants, and we get the little numbers, you know, we get the statement of cash flow, we get everything, you know, every month. And we're looking at it because we're looking at those numbers because everyone's sophisticated enough to look at the numbers, but we don't often know what the numbers mean for us. So it's first just, you know, being able to create dashboards that allow for you to see in one sheet or in mm-hmm. one screen. Again, you can create a dashboard that's just on an Excel spreadsheet. So you're deciding which, you know, indicators you're using to determine that. And you could just use an Excel spreadsheet, or there are multiple, you know, softwares out there that will allow for you to have business intelligence. But paying attention mm-hmm. to the numbers is the first thing, one of the first things that will help you be able to say, oh, I'm going to be intentional about keeping those costs down and keeping the numbers that we want to increase going up. Now, mm-hmm. the question on the table is then, how do you actually do that, you know, within a company that's growing? A part of that is creating, how do you keep the costs down? A part of that is creating systems, processes, in the company that are scalable with you. So if it takes 5 people in the business to be able to produce the widget that exists, that you're putting out there in the universe, how can you, if you have 100 widgets, does it mean that you have to have 500 people now? Or can you create some systems, some processes so that it still can be 5 people creating the 100 widgets?
And it's efficient. Okay.
So it's about, and the real thing is around creating systems and processes that are scalable with the business. So again, that goes back to, do you do the same? Because there are many, 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 many repeatable processes in a business that people don't even realize that they're doing. Sending an email, you take the mouse, you go to Outlook or wherever it is that you do it, you click a thing, you go through, you say a thing. Maybe just simply having whoever it is, maybe that if it's about scheduling, for instance, have a system that just automates that. Therefore, it doesn't require any additional people. So if you had more appointments scheduled, then you already have a system already in place. So there's no need to hire more people or to create another big lump of things to happen if you had more appointments that we're scheduling or through that email. So it's about finding ways to systematize, to automate in your small business so that when you are growing, when you have more customers, when you have more revenue, it doesn't require more investment in the business. Okay.
Now, for someone who's listening to this, though, and I don't want them working people to death, like if you're scaling exponentially, I mean, it's going really good. It sounded like you said that there wouldn't be, you increase your revenue, but there wouldn't be an increase in expenses. Is that what you said? But I mean, there's got to be some increase there, but
it's by a fraction of it. So you can determine how much you're scaling, right? And how much. So for instance, if you're growing and, I remember reading interview with this one guy. He has a lawn care company, and he started with his father, and then now they have more trucks that they had to buy, so that he had to hire more people to cut the lawn, and then he had to then of course increase insurance for the number of people, not just insurance for health, but insurance to cover to make sure in case people get injured. And then so all these things. And he was like, in the end, I looked at the numbers. He's like, I actually was making more money, more profit in the business when my business was smaller. So the reality is you are going to increase costs, but how can you minimize the increase of costs so that you can increase the difference between the growth and the cost? And that really does come to creating scalable processes. So thanks. Paying attention to that. Again, even if, we're not saying, growth is good. Growth is real good. So we're not poo-pooing on growth. And at some stage of our business, we want growth and only growth. However, when you start thinking about, hey, this is the stage of the business where I want to start scaling, it's just important to pay attention to the costs and and what systems you have in place that will allow for you to keep costs low enough that the scaling can continue to grow.
Right. And with the dashboard and targets too, you'll know when you're getting off track. Off track. Thank you. So that's good. And I asked that because I used to own a GNC franchise, and I've had practices in a couple of states. And it seems like a lot of times that people in those businesses anyway, they want to try to grow, but then they don't reinvest as well in the equipment and the software and the hardware and the inventory that they need to sustain what they're trying to do. And they get really frustrated by it, or their employees are being worked to death because they're still trying to do all of this with two people. So I'm trying to get a sense of how you balance that, with the processes and so forth, without at the same time working some other folks to death because you want them to do everything for 1,000 people that they used to do for 100.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Mo, what you have said is like everyday conversations that I'm having is the balance, right? That's
Mhm.
why I always say it's the balance, because I think first things first, just because you have this tech company over here scaled this in this amount of years and blah, 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 doesn't
Mhm.
mean you should scale in that kind of speed.
Right.
I believe, honestly, each business owner should sit back and say, what does growth and scale look like for me? What do I
Mm.
want to have happen?
Okay.
Then assessing what would make sense before the critical point where I have completely not only run myself to the ground, but run my team to the ground.
Right.
So, you can, like, if you've been in it for a bit, you can know when things get a little crazy. You can
Mhm.
kind of sense, okay, well, when maybe if someone's in the retail business, maybe they know, like, for instance, when the holidays happen or what, I'm like, okay, this is the tipping point, and we could do this for 2 weeks, but we can't do this forever. So
Right.
so now okay, for each say for each 15, 20 people that come into my boutique,
Mhm.
I need to have at least one salesperson on the floor. Okay, maybe I can increase that to 25 people, and it might lose a bit of customer touch, but it's still not crazy. But
Right.
if we get to 30, then it's enough, then we can't. So you start looking at your numbers and saying, looks like as we're growing, we're getting to the 25 people in the store at a time. So then I'm going to need to start bringing someone in. And then you could do it really in a way that doesn't create the expense, right? So you might
Right.
say, I'll bring someone in part-time, but then I'll create some systems and processes so that, instead of someone having to put the clothes back up all the time, I'll have a area where, we'll just sort of put them over here. And then we have a system where once an hour we do the clothes back. So it's just about, once you're in your business, I mean, Dr. Mo, you know your business more than I know your business at the same time. So when there's a tipping point. It's just
Mhm.
about paying attention
Right.
to it and deciding based on look, I'm not looking to see where that company over XYZ over there is doing. This is what I'm doing over here. This is what I want to do.
And plus XYZ, whatever the industry, in my experience, they are lying about what they're doing. I mean, just the inflation from grades in school to what my kids can do to what is going on in my business. It is just insane how people just lie. And that's the other way we get in trouble, trying to keep up with the Joneses or the Hewlett Packards or the IBMs, is that you don't really, really know what's going on over there if you're not inside. So
If you're not in it, if
yeah,
if you're not in it, you don't know. And oftentimes people assume a lot of things
right.
because no one wants to be, transparent. No one has to be transparent about their business to other people. But we have stories upon stories, Dr. Mo, of major corporations that were publicly traded, and everything looked good, but but in the end, things were kind of shady. I mean, I put a post on LinkedIn just the other day about, remember Enron?
Yes, the Crooked E. I was just thinking about them. Wow, that's crazy. You snatched it out of my head. I was just about to say something about, because it was in Houston. I'm in Texas.
Oh, that's right. So
yes,
ma'am. People who were completely affected by it.
Yes, ruined. I mean, lost everything. It was bad, very bad.
And professional, savvy Wall Street people couldn't tell what was going on in Enron. Right. Now, of course, had they just looked at the statement of cash flow, I'm just saying. But nonetheless.
Or listen to the whistleblowers who were trying to tell them, hey, something's wrong over here. Right. But again, we don't know that's going on.
Well, we don't know. So I think don't ever compare. I think it's important to be aware of what's going on, but don't compare. Your growth path is your growth path. Period. Done. And one of the things I do when I work with people all the time is, what's your life plan? How does your business fit into your life? Not how does your life plan fit into the business vision, but how does the business vision fit into the life plan?
Hello.
What is your growth path moving forward? And what I also do is, what is your exit strategy? Because,
Yes.
If you just building this thing and you have no plan to get out, then, you're building yourself a job.
Okay.
So
Let's talk about that. Why do the founders of startups or other businesses need to have an exit plan? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that.
well, the real truth around creating an exit plan early days. Okay, there's sort of a scary reason, and then there is the makes good sense reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the scary reason is so many business owners. So just the other day, one of my aunts, she came from the education world. She was an educator for a number of years. When she finished doing that, she started a preschool. And, she was really just doing it because, frankly, she loves educating young children, and she had retired. And so she's like, yeah, let's just do this. So she started it. But because she's good at what she does, and families are always looking for quality places to put their children,
Mm-hmm.
it thrived. And she got all these, all these kids, and families would literally bring their kids in and would not leave her. So as they were building their families, all their kids were going to the preschool. And so there's a whole community of folks that sort of developed around this preschool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she just recently retired from it and closed it. She did not have an exit plan. So basically all of that goodwill, all of those customers, all of the resources that she put into the school just closed. There was nothing to get out of it once she left. Whereas had she had an exit strategy, and it's not to say that she would have been able to sell it for a significant amount of money, but for sure, at least a couple multiples for sure,
Mm-hmm.
Based on what she invested in it. So the question, it's more along the lines of you build this thing, and then what's your plan? If you know in your head you're planning to maybe give it to your family, for instance, so you want to leave your business to your children. Now, how exactly do you plan to finance that? Because how does your retirement play out if you don't have a plan, right? You have to have insurance policy around it. Needs to be some contracts around how you're going to be able to get your retirement out of your business, but also transfer the business over to your family. A lot of times, kids don't want your business, while they love the fact that you do this, they have a different plan for their life. So maybe you want to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're going to sell something, you have to build it as an entity outside of yourself. So if everyone needs for you to be the one to show up in the business, then how are you going to sell it? Because this business is really you.
Right.
So if you know that you're going to exit by selling the company, or then you build it a little differently. It forces you to say, I need to have these systems, these processes, this way of being, so that, if 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, I can sell it. But so it's really, and you may not even want to sell it, but at some point you're no longer going to be here on this planet.
Right.
So you do want to have a plan so that once you know what the plan is, you build it accordingly, and you're not worried about the next step, because what you don't want to do is build yourself a job. You want to build a business. Jay Abraham, I heard him say the other day, he said, he's one of those business guru people. He said, a small business is like a hedge fund. The owner is its primary investor. So if you think of the business as a hedge fund that you're investing in, you need to make good decisions around that. And at some point, how are you going to take the money out and then move to the next project?
That's a great analogy. And it also makes you think about if you are able to, if it's in a form, you're able to pass it on, having a succession plan. So that you get some of your investment of time and energy back, but also so that it doesn't fail, because that's the worst thing when you work so hard to build something and you offload it and it fails. It is just heartbreaking. And I've been through that.
It's very, I think the last time I saw was only maybe 20% of businesses passed on after 2 generations still last.
Oh my goodness.
So you really have to, if you want to leave it for your kids, which I think is lovely, and there has to be a succession plan, bringing the kids into the business real soon and early, slowly acclimating them to the tasks. One thing that a lot of businesses will do is they will send their children, obviously, go to college, get a university degree, and then work for a few years at a competitor, but a larger competitor. So, and then come back to the business. So there's a strategy, but if you don't have an exit plan, then you're not even thinking about the plan, about doing these types of things. So that's why I think it's important to have an exit plan, even in the beginning stages of building a business.
Wow, that is really good. Not something I've heard explained in that way. Thank you for sharing that. And I think right there, I always have this moment that I want to be the price of admission. So folks, there's your moment. Think about the future in a different way, particularly if you've worked hard to build a business for your kids and you want it to stay in the family for generations. You got to do things a little bit differently. I love that. I am enjoying this conversation, and I don't talk about business a lot. We're usually talking about lifestyle and imposter syndrome and all of that, which works in here as well, because like you said, your personal life, your self-care, that Maslow's pyramid, if you don't have that together, all of this other stuff will fail. We've seen it time and time again. So what about, I want to loop back to scaling versus growing. Something that crossed my mind as well with some nonprofits and small businesses that I work with the different type of coaching that I do. People don't think enough about renegotiating the contracts when you're doing things at a higher volume. What is that something that needs to be considered? Because I've gone into a couple of things and I'm like, you guys are paying way too much for this. You've been meeting with these people. Have you looked at other locations, other contractors? Just, you can take this over. I'm just mumbling now, but
no, you're absolutely right, Dr. Mo, because I think, I think of the ecosystem of business. Yeah. It's not just the business. It's the business owner. It's the employees.
Yes.
It's the vendors.
Right.
And all of these entities have families attached. I mean, these are human beings that are attached to these businesses, to these organizations, and therefore there are families that are supported by that. And there's also the taxes that we pay to build a solid infrastructure in our communities and making sure that we live in a place that works, that we want to live in. And it also moves into how we want our country to exist, because small businesses employ 2/3 of employees.
Oh, yeah.
Employees work for small business.
Bread and butter.
It's bread and butter of our nation. And then if you think about it, if you extrapolate to the world, in the US, I think it's 90-something% of businesses are small, medium-sized companies. In Europe, it's 99%. In the continent of Africa, it's 99%. So it's huge.
Yes, it's important.
The ecosystem of small businesses is massive. So when you start looking at your existence, I mean, even the way where you bank, if you don't have a strong relationship with your bankers, you're like the local person in the bank that you bank, if you can't walk into your local bank and you can start negotiating a way to, if you need to get a business loan, because in order for you to grow and to invest, you need loans at some point. Right. And you hear it all the time, particularly with small businesses, but particularly small businesses that are owned by people of color. And then not to mention when it's owned by women of color, you cannot get investments or loans. And so it's like, who are you banking with? How long have you been banking with them? Oh, for 20 years. So you've had all your money through that bank. And, you haven't gone in and had a conversation with the bankers there to talk about, how your relationship is. So it's not just about the contracts with vendors. It's about the banks. It's about everything. And the thing is, we assume that it's almost this weird posture, like we are it's not seeing the importance of us in the lives of the vendors, of our bank, of our, it's like we sort of
Good point.
rank a little bit like, oh, well, at least I have this little account, or at least I have this little thing, how many, even some basic things, how, we used to have a major account at FedEx when we were building Memorial, and the amount of FedEx packages that just my department would put out, okay? Because I'm constantly, sending out stuff to different corporations.
Sure, right.
So you're looking, you're thinking, okay, if you know that you're running up a huge bill over a lifetime, and maybe right now you have some cash flow situation, do you know how many small businesses won't even pick up the phone to their people who they spend all this money with and say, hey, can we negotiate our rate? Can we, negotiate? Can we stretch out our bills in a way that will allow for this dip right now in cash flow projection? I cannot get over that. So to your point, Dr. Mo, it is taking ourselves seriously, our economic engine in this country. And if even though you're a small business, you are a business. So own your power, wield your power, and foster those relationships, and pick up the phone and say, look, I can move to another bank.
Right.
I can move to another bank because you have options.
Yes.
And go from there. If you are in a business where you have to have like a lot of phone stuff, because you have salespeople that are always on the phone, you have a conversation with your phone company about those numbers. And you always make sure that the same way because many folks come out of corporate and start a business, right?
Right. Especially now.
Especially now. You look at the way corporate operates with their vendors.
Oh yeah, they're brutal. They are brutal. If you want this business, this is how we're gonna do it. Yeah, they are brutal.
Treat yourself that way. It's this idea of identity. There's a whole. Bob Proctor would always say, you cannot out earn your self-esteem, your self-image.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one.
You still see yourself as this little small business doing my little.
That's how everyone else will see you. Yeah.
Go ahead and do that.
Yeah, you're right. Good stuff. You are preaching. This is the business pulpit today. I better listen up. I know you got notes. You're probably tired of typing or wishing you could pull your car over. This is good. It's evergreen, though. It will be here for you. And Carrie Ann Powell is going to tell us in a moment how you can connect with her if this is resonating and you think she can help you. I'm telling you, y'all, I was just so happy when we connected because I'm learning. This is helping my business right now. I'm taking notes. As we talk, I'm going to get off this a meeting, an interview, and make some calls myself. But
yeah, man, negotiate those contracts.
Yes, ma'am. Here's something for people on the other side of the application. If they're not the owner, but you're an employee who's invested in the company, particularly small and medium-sized business, you kind of get to be like a little family because you're spending so much time together. Say you're looking at joining a new team, a new company. How do you assess a business owner and their team, either online or in person, to see if you're going to be a good fit? I mean, there's maybe something to what they tell you or questions you could ask, but how can you assess that? Because I want to be a good fit where I go. They're asking me a bunch of stuff. What do I need to do?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think, first of all, always sort of think, particularly if you're going into a business that looks like it's growing and it's, going to be moving places, because at some point you might decide that you want to be in leadership as well too. But first you want to kind of look and see the people that are there. And it's hard to kind of tell this, but you can kind of sometimes tell if, sort of ask questions, because I know sometimes they might pass people along. Like nowadays, the trend is you interview with multiple people.
Right.
So ask the people how they got to the company, right? So you might find out if someone's building a company and it's kind of like, oh, I needed social media, and cousin Susie something about social media, so she came on board. And then I needed accounting, and and my best friend's husband was good at accounting, so we kind of paused him in there. You can kind of like get a gauge of is there a deliberate path to building the company in a way where the people there's a box in the org chart that they have decided what they need and they are hiring accordingly. Mm-hmm. Or is this one of those things that kind of hodgepodgey built out because you would likely have a situation where there might be people in wrong seats? And then that's kind of where it gets a little weird because the company will not be as strong foundationally. I can't tell you how often I've had to go in and they're having a problem. They don't know why. And then you get in and you realize that it's because they really are still building this team based on early days when they just were, bringing someone on board to do
it. And nepotism. Which
nepotism.
There's no size of a company at which that is not, cannot be an issue, which is just mind-boggling.
Yes. And it's, it's hard, right? Early days when they do that kind of cousin, auntie, whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you ask the question, so how did you don't have to be all like,
right. That's good. It doesn't seem like you're, invasive or attacking. That just seems like a good question.
A good question. How did you get here? And then you start asking a couple more people as you go through the interview, you can get a sense of where they are. But if you hear people say, oh yeah, I always wanted to do XYZ. And when, I went to the company, did a great interview, and I have now grown, I have been promoted. Yes. I have taken on more responsibility.
That part. Right, commensurate with I have also gotten more income, because sometimes it's just I have taken on more responsibility and I now work 18 hours a day instead of 8. Anyway, I'm sorry, I had a flashback. My bad.
No, I know. We all have the triggers like the PTSD.
Yes, an emotional landmine. Woo! Want to do it. Bless the Lord.
Okay. Everyone breathe. We all know.
It's okay now. It's okay. You're safe. You're safe. Oh, Lord. That is really, really good. And I like to cover all this other spectrum because we can have business owners, people who want their business, people who just want to really be a good team member and be supportive. How can they add value? And everybody, I think, can learn something from this wonderful conversation we've had today. Before we go, I believe you have a free download for our listeners, a PDF. Tell us about that and how they can get it. I'll put that in the show notes. And then also how they can reach you, Carrie Ann, to learn more about your services.
Absolutely. So if you are a business owner and you feel like maybe there might be some chaos happening and some of the things that we talked about kind of felt like we were stepping on your toes a little bit, then go ahead, and I've got a great PDF, and the name of it is The 8 True Culprits Causing Chaos in Your Business. The 8 True Culprits Causing Chaos in Your Business. In this document, in this ebook, I basically label based on my experience and what I have found in companies. So people come and they say, oh, I got a cash revenue issue, cash flow issue, and they think the issue is they need to get sales. They need to, But when I start looking in and doing some foundational stuff, it may be a whole nother issue, such as maybe the product cannot scale more than what you currently have. Okay. So there are some, I have listed 8 foundational things that if they are not working in your business could be causing chaos. And I provide some solutions that you can use to identify if that's it, and then to sort of begin to fix it. Nice. So definitely go and pull that. How you can find it is at the website, www.nobusinesschaos.com. Nobusinesschaos.com, because Chaos is the enemy of business. So we don't have it. NoBusinessChaos.com. And if you're not a business owner and you just want to connect with me or find out more, you can definitely, I'd love to connect with anyone. I'm on LinkedIn with a full name, and, connect with me there. And the business, the website for the company is trafalgarstrategies.co. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Appreciate you so much. And thank you for sharing those. We'll have those links, of course, in the show notes so that folks can connect with you. Thank you so much. You've been amazing, Carrie-Ann. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and join me again next week for more empowering and educational information from global thought leaders like Carrie-Ann Powell, founder of Trafalgar Strategies. And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and renew. Thank you.